Alright, now this is how you kick off a new year in literature. I am a huge fan of witches and witchcraft. I've read a lot of witch-related books, both fiction and non-fiction, and manga and comic books. I've been thinking about getting a tattoo of a witch. I do my best to dress slightly witchy. I love witches. I have a real affinity for them. And that means that I have no problem with the genre that's now being called witch lit. Witch lit can stay. Witch lit is fantastic. Just like all of these feminist retellings of Greek mythology that we're getting at the moment, we're also getting almost more witch-related books than we can read. There are so many great books, again, both fiction and non-fiction, about witchcraft going on right now. Every few months we get a new novel set in the past about witches. And it's great. Bring it on. Keep 'em coming. And Now She Is Witch by Kirsty Logan is one of my new favourites. I think my favourite witch-related book ever is The Manningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore, and I'd probably now put this as my second favourite. Now She Is Witch does so much right when it comes to the themes and the concept and the tropes and the philosophy of witches and witchcraft. Let me explain. Now She Is Witch is set in a medieval place. That's it. That's all we know. We don't know what country. And the only place names we get, which aren't place names at all, are the North and the South. That's it. What this does is remove any distraction from the themes and the tone of the novel. We get a very stripped down thing. There is an intense thematic focus in Now She Is Witch on misogyny and patriarchy, and on religious oppression and persecution, which are the themes when it comes to witch hunts and oppression of women through the lens of witchcraft and witch-finding. And this novel removes all other distractions. It filters everything down. It minimizes it. So you have a focus on one protagonist and her companion, a specific goal in mind, and a constant barrage of emotional and thematic pain related to womanhood or being othered in some way. The beauty of witches in folklore, in literature specifically, is the fact that you can relate to witch hunts, whether you're a woman or not. Because depending on who you are, where you are, when you are, the concept of persecution, being othered, being part of a minority, can happen to almost anyone. Hang on, I've gone on a tangent here and I can't remember why. Let's just talk about what it is. Now She Is Witch begins with its protagonist, Lux. She's a young girl, and as far as I can tell, she's sort of on that cusp between childhood and adulthood. Maybe she's in her late teens. Lux is returning to her home, and that home is an isolated cabin in the woods, where her mother lives. She was sent away to some kind of sanctuary, a religious place, where she was punished, taught, something. We learn a lot more about this sanctuary as the story goes on, but at the beginning, that's really all we know. She is returning home from this religious sanctuary. And when she gets home, she finds that what she and her mother always feared has finally happened. Because she and her mother were cunning women, people who exist on the border of society, on the edge of a village or a town, women who traditionally know a lot about plants, potions, poisons, anything that affects the body, and people would often come to them for medicine, a way to fix their ills. But these cunning women are often called witches, and people give them a wide berth, and finally her house has been burned down, and her mother has been killed. Given that she has nothing to do now, her time at the sanctuary is over, her mother is gone, her home is gone, the people nearby do not trust her, what does she do? Well, luckily, another young woman, slightly older than her, comes along. A woman who's just called Else. And Else turns to Lux and says, there is a stronghold to the north, ruled by an awful lord, a man who deserves to die. And I am on a revenge quest to kill him. I want to poison him, and you can help me. And Lux goes, alright, I've got nothing else to do. So off they go. Lux and Else journey through the forest. They meet travelling mummers who are putting on plays and entertaining people as they go, and they will eventually get to this stronghold, which they plan to infiltrate and eventually kill this lord. Now, the novel is separated into 5 parts, and explaining these parts won't spoil anything. Parts 1, 3, and 5 are traditionally told. You have a third-person narrator in the past tense who describes what's going on. But in parts 2 and 4, we get first-person backstories of both Lux and Else, and they take up a decent amount of the book. And that structure is delightful. Parts 2 and 4 act like a reprieve from a pretty oppressive and dark narrative. This is a book about, as I said, religious persecution and patriarchy. It is about oppression of women. But Kirsty Logan also goes to great lengths to remind us that her writing is trans-inclusive, to the point that you actually have a non-binary character in this, although because it's set in a medieval place and time, you don't get that phrase. But instead, when Lux meets these mummers travelling through the forest, one of them, whose name is Ash, explains that they have no gender. Lux says, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And Ash smiles and says, "No." And the two of them briefly enter into a kind of romantic and sexual relationship while they happen to be in the same place. And eventually they have to move on. I really appreciated this as a trans person because, unfortunately, the concept of witches and witchcraft has in recent years been co-opted by transphobic women, TERFs, in a very misguided battle against trans people. The idea that they feel a kinship with witches because they see trans women as men and tools of the patriarchy. Ironically and conversely, I feel a kinship with witches and witchcraft because the TERFs that do that are hounding us and hunting us as though we are witches and they are witch finders. There's a story in here somewhere. So I really appreciated the fact that Kirsty Logan, a queer writer, writing about witches, makes it clear that this is a trans-inclusive story, while also still making that contextually applicable to the place and time, this random medieval world that she's created. And I say random because, as I said, it's not specific. But the ultimate villain of this story being both patriarchy and religious oppression is hammered over our heads repeatedly, as we learn more about the sanctuary that Lux had to go to when she was younger, and the Lord who stands tall atop this stronghold. Our blood starts to boil, and we get angrier and angrier, faced with the oppression of men and religion. And the way that traditions, social norms, and faith are so often used as tools that simply exist to oppress women. And there's not really any other reason for it. And as soon as a woman starts to act differently or push back, she's labelled a witch and she is burned or drowned. This novel reminds us of these things again and again and again, while giving us characters to love and root for, and a really fun, bleak setting to get involved with. There is a claustrophobic element to this novel, whether you're in the forest or the stronghold, or in the mind and memories of its protagonists, you feel closed in. And that claustrophobia makes it feel very gothic. Having a novel that focuses on witches and witchcraft, being very gothic, being historically medieval, is just beautiful. The setting, the world, the way that the characters interact with each other, it's really, really fun. The superstitions that are explored, the religious traditions, they all serve to help you get lost in this narrative, which is really enthralling while also feeling kind of uncomfortable, but they also serve to make you angry. And what I like is Kirsty Logan's choice to make all of this vague. Despite the fact that there's a lot of Christian imagery in here, specific words related to Christianity are mostly omitted from the text. So you'll have crosses and crucifixes, but I don't think there are references to Jesus himself. And you've got this Lord, who is a dangerous, oppressive, misogynistic figure. But as far as I remember, he's never given a name. He is just the Lord. And there's an irony in the fact that he prays to his Lord, the Lord, who is also seen as a man. This constant, repetitive nature drowns out womanhood. The Lord is a man, his Lord is a man. There is a chain of command that is both physical and spiritual, and it's men all the way down. Somewhere in the dregs are women. Women are wives, women are servants, women are witches. And in fact, the novel points these things out. Talks about how if you're a woman, you're a wife, you're a pregnant thing, you're a widow. That's kind of it. And if you don't get to be any of those things, you're a slave to men. This is an angry book, like a lot of books about witches and witchcraft are. It's a proudly feminist book, and it enjoys its own anger. It enjoys taking revenge on patriarchy, and it doesn't shy away from very, very bleak imagery and events. But it's also a book that remembers that it is a narrative, that it has characters, that it has protagonists that you're supposed to root for and support and enjoy being around. And so it doesn't get too distracted by its themes, by its politics, and it still tells a very enthralling story about female friendship, about love between family members, and also a kind of found family dynamic as well. But all of these things are watered down a bit because of the medieval setting and because there is a singular journey, a revenge tragedy being told. I am so impressed with this novel. Kirsty Logan is an awesome writer. This is so well plotted and executed. Now She Is Witch is a wonderful, proper start to 2023. Bring on Witchlit. Give me as much great Witchlit as I can stomach, and I can stomach a lot. Subscribe for books.